President Trump announces plans for full takeover of Gaza in order to rebuild the whole area. The US Democrats are having a meltdown and move to impeach the president despite losing the election. And in this live stream, we're going to go through the press conference between the US president and the Israeli prime minister and explain to you what happened. Welcome to 2C TV, your global news channel. I'm Maya 2C, and this is your latest news update from the United States as the US Democrats are not too happy about what happened at the press conference with Trump and Netanyahu. It's quite fascinating how they don't understand why they've lost the election. They don't understand that the same tactics cannot be used. It's completely embarrassing. If you're watching this live, we'll get your reaction anyway. We're going to go through the press conference and what President Trump has proposed, some reaction to it, not just from the liberals, but also on an international level. Saudi Arabia have reacted already, and everything else around this story, because the impeachment idea, which came from a very specific, very particular representative on behalf of the US Democrats, it's kind of laughable anyway. First things first, let's go and see the moment President Trump made the announcement and the proposal for the full takeover of Gaza. We now officially have an option. We have a two-state solution. Israel here, the United States down there in the Gaza Strip. So we can have a two-state solution as long as it's Israel and America.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
It's absolutely spot on. You can't go back to normal. You can't just have Hamas returning to power. But the one thing we will discuss in this live show is Trump's tactics, strategy long term, but also tactics short term. Because this is a classic Trump playbook. Even though it's classic, you still can't really predict what it's going to be doing next. You can only do it in hindsight, but this has been done before. He says one thing to push us for something else. And if that something else doesn't happen, he would do the first thing anyway. So it's not necessarily a full bluff, but he could use it as a bluff tactic. But because they know he's unpredictable, he could use the bluff as a real policy. So it's not just going to say words, random words like politicians. If they don't do what he wants, he will still do it anyway. This is the moment the Democrats had a meltdown. Let's go to Representative Al Green. Oh no, yes, of course. They've come out, and Al Green, he came out as well to essentially do the theater, drama on stage, as usual. But that's not the only thing. He seemed quite serious about the impeachment movement. He called it a movement, by the way. Impeachment movement. Let's go and see what he said.
And still I rise, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, with a to whom it may concern message. To whom it may concern, ethnic cleansing in Gaza is not a joke, especially when it emanates from the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, when he has the ability to perfect what he says. Ethnic cleansing in Gaza is no joke, and the Prime Minister of Israel should be ashamed, knowing the history of his people, to stand there and allow such things to be said. Ethnic cleansing has been a crime against humanity. And I stand here today in the well to denounce what was said, to denounce what the president said, to denounce the complicity of the Prime Minister of Israel, and to remind people that Dr. King was right. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And injustice in Gaza is a threat to justice in the United States of America. I rise to announce that the movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done. I also rise to say that the impeachment movement is going to be a grass-up movement, not a top-down. The people have got to move forward. The people have to demand it. And when the people demand it, it will be done. I did it before. I laid the foundation for impeachment, and it was done. Nobody knows more about it than I. And I know that it's time for us to lay the foundation again. On some issues, it is better to stand alone than not stand at all. On this issue, I stand alone, but I stand for justice. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back.
Oh, this is just so good. It's a clown show, absolute clown show. You lost the election. You don't have the power. You don't have the majority. What are you guys doing? It's so insane. But again, it's just theatre. That's all it is. It's performance. And it does make them feel good for about 10 minutes until they go back to bed and they start punching the pillow. It's a serious epidemic what's going on with US liberalism at this point. You want to see the reaction from Prime Minister Netanyahu when Trump was making the announcement, and obviously when they were sitting in the Oval Office. It was kind of funny because the press were asking questions and saying, so what's going to happen to Gaza? Like, you're not going to take it back to how it was, the usual nonsense. And the president was like, well, we can't. The whole place is terrible. We can make it beautiful again. This is Netanyahu's face while that was happening.
Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build.
You see Bibi's face is like, I'm loving this. This is the best trip I've had to the US in a very long time. You can tell the difference between when the Israelis used to visit the White House with Joe Biden and with Trump. And we're going to go back, by the way, to compare and contrast in terms of the two administrations anyway. But there's been some reaction. Obviously, Secretary Marco Rubio already said Gaza must be free from Hamas. As the POTUS shared today, the United States stands ready to lead and make Gaza beautiful again. It's goodbye, if you want to say it. Goodbye. Our pursuit is one of lasting peace in the region for all people. Make Gaza beautiful again. It's not that catchy, but it is what it is. Now, as we said, do you remember this? When Israelis used to visit the White House, the Oval Office, the former president used to pick the right moment to start taking a nap.
Yet another chapter in the beautiful story of the friendship between our two nations, the United States of America and the Jewish and democratic state of Israel. Both of us who seek to do good.
Wake him up. Just wake him up when it's bad. It's so bad. He was actually napping. Can't help himself. I don't know why they were pushing him to run again. Sleepy Joe. Actually, I mean, I get it. You get tired, you get older. But you're in the Oval Office. You have a guest. There are cameras. Take a pill. Something, anything. I don't care what you take. Just take it. Ask Hunter. Hunter would have things to help you stay awake. Anyway, that happened, right? Going back to the situation with the current update, we had this actually from Michael Talsharan saying this is what happens when people watch the raw footage of the 7th of October. Now, in case you don't know, over the last few days before the visit that we had, Bibi's visit to the White House, Trump announced that he's going to be watching the full raw footage. This was the body cams, obviously Hamas filmed it themselves, and everything else to to watch it, finally watch the whole thing. And he did. And that post that we just saw, yeah, that's what happens when you actually see what they did. Now, as one of the journalists, I watched the raw footage as well, a year and a half ago, and it's something else. It's, a lot of people have already seen pictures and certain videos online from that day, but it's the detail. It's harrowing. So it does something to you, and obviously, clearly, you can see the president. Although the president knew exactly what the plan was going to be anyway, because he's been thinking about that throughout the campaign, the election campaign, and everything else. Now, going back to the press conference and the day in general, there was a very important moment as well when the journalists and reporters were asking President Trump, what about Saudi Arabia? Because obviously part of the Abraham Accords and the push obviously for the new Gaza and everything else, the United States of Gaza, it was going to be Saudi Arabia's demand, because they demand that there should be a Palestinian state. Otherwise, they're not going to agree to anything, including friendship with Israel. The president said, no, they no longer demand, but there was a pushback.
Are the Saudis demanding a Palestinian state?
No, they're not. No.
The Saudis demanding a Palestinian state?
No, they're not. No.
A Palestinian state?
No, they're not. No.
No, they're not. Now, again, this is a classic Trump move. He knew there was going to be a backlash. He knew they didn't actually fully say that, right? Because the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia released a statement straight afterwards saying the foreign ministry affirms that Saudi Arabia's position on the establishment of a Palestinian state is firm and unwavering. Obviously, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, clearly from this stunt. Now, for the record, Saudi Arabia don't really care for Palestinians. They don't love the Palestinians. They simply want, they push for a Palestinian state, just like the rest of the Arab world, because they don't want the Palestinians to be in their own places. Just stay in your country. Give them a country, let them be there. That's the reason Saudi Arabia pushed for this, not because they believe in the Palestinian cause. Now, Trump clearly decided to put words in their mouth to put pressure on them, to corner them. Now, one move could be that he's announced that he is going to be taking over Gaza. There will be a pushback. Then Saudi would say, well, you can't do that. And then Trump says, well, there's only one other option. Continue with the Abraham Accords, and we'll give you something else you want. And maybe it's time you, or Egypt, or Jordan, or all three of you, to take control of Gaza. That's the push, isn't it? That's one of the moves that you can actually see. To push them to say, well, you don't want the US there. Okay, you take control of it. You want a Palestinian state, you monitor it. Your responsibility as the Arab world. So obviously it all goes back to how the Saudi side will react over the next few weeks and months. It's not really the instant reaction after the press conference. Now, of course, Netanyahu himself was extremely grateful, which makes sense, again, compared to his experience over the last few years with the previous administration with Sleepy Joe. This is on a whole new level. And he said that Trump is the greatest friend to Israel.
This is a testament to your friendship and support for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And that's why the people of Israel have such enormous respect for you.
There was an image, by the way, earlier this morning from Tel Aviv that massive banners saying, thank you, President Trump. It makes sense. By the way, it's not just the US Democrats who are having an emotional breakdown. For some reason, random politicians or former politicians from other countries are getting involved. We're talking about Humza. Of course, Humza Yousaf is back, the former First Minister of Scotland. Why wouldn't he get involved? Saying why? Because obviously Beth Rigby of Sky News reported that Trump said Gaza is a living hell, right? So Hamza said, Why is it a living hell? Who bombed it? Killing tens of thousands of people, including children, and reduced Gaza to rubble. Also, what Trump calls permanent resettlement is what the rest of the world should call ethnic cleansing. That's literally not the definition, but okay. Humza says Gaza belongs to the people of Gaza, period. You brought them there. So, that's not the definition of ethnic cleansing. We know that. Secondly, why doesn't Humza mention what happened on the 7th of October? He asks who bombed them. Yeah, who started it? F around and find out. Why is it that we still have the majority of Gazans celebrating the ceasefire by saying we will support Hamas again? Who's the bad guy in this? The country that's trying to defend itself after being invaded? Or the nutters who say, we will do it again. We will do 7th of October again. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult, but apparently it is. For Humza, useless. There was another massive announcement today. The United Nations are not happy with the Donald. Guess why? Yes, another executive order has been signed. President Trump is now defunding the United Nations, specifically withdrawing the US from the so-called human rights group of the United Nations, the Council, as well as the UNRWA in Gaza. We can actually go to that video and the moment the announcement was made.
We have an executive order prepared for your attention that would withdraw the United States from the UN Human Rights Council, would withdraw the United States from the UNRWA, which is a refugee organization, and would also review American involvement in UNESCO, which has also exhibited anti-American bias. More generally, the executive order calls for a review of American involvement and funding in the UN in light of the wild disparities in levels of funding among different countries that, as you've expressed previously, is deeply unfair to the United States.
So I've always felt that the UN has tremendous potential. It's not living up to that potential right now. It really isn't. Hasn't for a long time. It has. There are great hopes for it, but it's not being well run, to be honest, and they're not doing the job. A lot of these conflicts that we're working on should be settled, or at least we should have some help in settling them. We never seem to get help.
He's right. The US is not getting any help from the other. I mean, they don't need the help, but it's about the principle. It's the same with NATO, where the Americans are basically funding everybody else instead of them actually paying their fair share. So that's happening. So Humza Yousaf from Scotland decided to get involved randomly. The French are getting involved. Obviously, if something random happens in the world, the French are always getting involved anyway. The French government have said that the third state control in Gaza is not allowed. Emmanuel Macron himself will go stop by the Rafah border. Stop the Trump tanks from taking control. Imagine a Trump tower in Gaza. That's the dream, right? Now, the French have said, France will continue to campaign for the implementation of the two-state solution, the only one that can guarantee long-term peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. The foreign minister said, adding to the future of Gaza must not involve control by a third state. We've literally had the same thing because you brought the Ottoman Empire, and post the Ottoman Empire, they decided to bring in people from North Africa into Gaza to control it. They were not from Gaza. You can't bring people randomly from other places without declaring a state. They literally invaded Israel. And then they basically said the Gaza Strip should be separated, and they had to give it to Egypt to control for a while, and Egypt made a mess, so that was lovely. And now we are in this situation. Give me strength. Anyway, let's see what's going on with you lovely people in the live chats. Let's get some super chats, then some non-super chats. Davey says, Maya, get a chair at the press secretary. What? I think you meant press. Is that press conference? The press room, not press secretary, right? If you mean the White House press, yes, we are already there. So with TCTV, as we confirmed last week, we are now going to be represented in the White House. We have a press pass, and we shall have a reporter soon on behalf of TCTV, because obviously the White House have opened up the press conferences to new media. And luckily, we managed to get in. Now, Aaron says Trump is 6 ways from Sunday. The establishment. Let's not forget, by the way, there's a lot of people who always, I don't know why, they assume that Trump's rhetoric is straightforward. And some people then trying to overanalyze Trump's rhetoric. Both sides are incorrect. It's the same we always say, the reason that the Democrats lose to Trump is because they take him literally but not seriously. Whereas his own side, the conservative side, take him seriously but not literally. There's a massive difference. Now the establishment themselves know this, the actual state in America, but the others seem to be clueless. They've been watching too much Batman. Was that? Is that Trump? Or could be Al Green, actually. John says, now if the Americans are going to fix the Levant, how about they help Lebanon while they're at it? They can't just go around and liberate countries. That would be a terrible idea. One of the main reasons that Gaza plan makes sense is because there's no one in charge. You can't really go and invade a country that already has a government. I mean, we tried that in Iraq. That's not a good idea. Don't do it. Lebanon already has a government. They just need to man up. But Gaza is completely wrecked. So there has to be a new management, new supervisor, and the idea to push Egypt and Saudi and all the other guys to basically get involved in order to stop Trump. That's the whole point. Say, oh, okay, Mr. Trump, you don't need to come. Don't worry, we'll actually take over. We will manage it. Can you help us rebuild it? Sure. Here's some money. What's this? Pro-Narnia protester says you can't displace people. The same person says, from the river to the sea, Narnia will be free. Basically, yeah. The Palestinian supporters will say, oh yeah, they can't displace people. They're the same people who say from the river to the sea. It's stupid, right? Anyway. Vinnie King says, how do you handle criticism, Maya? I don't know, give one to me. It'll be great. Where's the criticism? We're waiting. David says, we need a Doge system. But I think every country in the West needs one anyway. But you know, let's see how it goes in America. Let's get some non-super chats. Simon says the Palestine plan, well, there's no Palestine plan, it's the Gaza takeover. Yeah, is merely an idea. He's floating and socializing, as his press secretary stated. The Democrats are deflecting as usual. It won't work. So that's the thing. I mean, just because the press secretary says something doesn't mean it's true. Just because the president says something doesn't mean it's true. That's the whole point. Blue Sapphire says, stop appeasing and start making them take accountability for their effing actions. Actions have consequences. It's time that they face them 70 years late. Yes. Vinny says, I will email you with respect. Ooh, looking forward to it. Thank you. Right. Julian says, Trump sorting out Gaza could be a brilliant idea. It gives the Palestinian authorities something else to worry about. True. Good times. Anyway, first says, congratulations on the White House press pass. Thank you very much. And Totalitarian says, as long as he takes out Hamas Palestinians can return. Yeah, but there has to be a supervision, monitoring in the area to make sure nobody with those extremist views are allowed to take over. That's the whole point. You know, if you allow them to regroup, there's a big problem. Anyway, that is the latest we have for you guys, ladies and gentlemen, on 2C TV. Make sure to check out all the other shows. We have a very important video coming out at 9 p.m. UK time in about an hour and a half. And that is actually about the situation with the blasphemy laws. Yes, blasphemy laws are returning to the UK, as you already know. We have a special interview with Stephen Barrows, the barrister, to talk about the legality and, of course, the morality of it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.